right now.
Oh, you're fine. All right,
So
so let's get cracking. All right, so tonight we're doing a live interview. This is our second in our series. The first one we had Matt Disney on. In this series, we're gonna have Jamesha, or just should I call you Jam Dot Fish or Jam Fish or Jam
or
Jam Fish
just
Fish?
just you know.
Okay. And what we're going to do tonight is open up with how we actually met. Uh, you keynote, you keynoted at SRE. Was that 2017?
Yeah, I think S was it SRE con or no, it was a different con. Was it no, it was Lisa.
It
It
was
was
Lisa.
Lisa.
I thought it was SRE
Lisa.
because it was
And
in because SRE is in that same hotel.
yeah, the SRE con, the only SRE con I've been to is the SRE con in Europe the first year that they ran it.
Okay, so in that hotel is where they have SRE. So Lisa. Uh,
Totally.
and you keynoted, and actually, I had got to the hotel late because I flew in and then I dropped my stuff off, and then I got to the hotel, and everybody's like, "Oh, you did a good job on your keynote," and I was like, "Me? I did? I couldn't have." I couldn't have done a good job. So, long story short, I'm like, who are they talking about? But me and you have exchanged information over Twitter and talked and whatnot.
Yeah,
So
totally.
we didn't, I had no clue, what everybody was talking about. And then somebody was like, yeah, you got a twin running around here. I was like, I got a twin? Me? I have a twin. Hence, here you are, Jamfish.
Yep.
We had a couple of laughs over that because
Yeah.
everybody, a couple of people came up to me and kept confusing me with you and saying that you did a good job, and I love the fact that you were just so powerful in your keynote. I love the fact that you were powerful in your keynote. I'm
Yeah.
glad. I'm glad it
I'm
worked
also,
out.
I'm also like super excited because that was the first time I did a keynote, and then they were like, "Oh, we're just gonna put you near the front." So I was like the keynote to like kick off the entire conference, and I was
Right.
just like I didn't find that out until like several weeks beforehand, and I was like,
Oh,
okay,
oh, okay. Thank you.
oh, okay, I got this. So like it was, yeah, it was super dope to do that and have people respond so well too.
I'm sorry I missed it, but I did go back and look at it because I am a avid YouTuber of all the conferences. That's how I kind of stay up with what's going on, who's doing what when I can't make the conference.
Yeah, and
And
it's content is super useful. Like,
right, especially when you're trying to convey it to a team of people, versus
that,
you saying it like here, read, listen to this.
like that's super important, especially with security stuff. And it's like, hi, thank you for the welcome.
So speaking of that, what drove you to getting into security, and then I don't want to say this. I don't want to say DevSecOps. I don't want to say DevXOps. I just kind of say security and DevOps.
Yeah, so for me, I just say security and operations
Right.
because like the most I've had it on my probably LinkedIn for a while that I do just security and operations because that makes sense for me. But just to give a background to everybody else,
And let me.
I've been in tech now for probably 16 years at this point.
Mm,
Like, I have not been pretty much I've been working in tech since I was 15, and I've been dabbling in tech since I was 12. So I've been in here for a while, and mostly what I do is either operations or some type of security therein with it. So pretty much throughout my career, I have always had security involved, even when it hasn't been the primary thing. So now as I'm getting further along in my career, security is becoming more and more of a forefront thing. So I'm kind of doing more security stuff now. simply because there's just a dearth of security people, and all the startups now and all the smaller businesses that are up and coming are needing like security people, at least to get a jump start to having some of the bigger deals, or just wanting better security and protection and needing somebody to talk to about that and handle that part of it.
Right.
Or foster it, at least in my case where I'm currently working. But the reason I got into security, and this is funny because I was talking to a group of students about this a couple weeks ago, were for two reasons. One is because it would make me a lot of money. I grew up poor, and I wanted a bit more financial security than what I grew up with. And wanted to make sure that I was never in that position again, or my kids weren't in that position. So somebody told me, when I was starting to get into computers, I was originally going to get into networking, and at the same time, people were talking about, oh, well, you should get into security because I know so-and-so and they make a crap ton of money. And I was like, what? But at the same time, I was like, well, I don't know enough security stuff to actually become a security person. So I'm just going to put it to the side and do networking because that seems to be the big money thing too. Because it was at the time, this was before networking, as a service, ate the world.
Right.
So when I went into college, and this is the second leading into number two. So I went into college, I was going to do networking with a concentration in security. And then at the college and university I went to called DePaul, they had started a degree called Information Assurance and Security Engineering. And when I looked at it, sorry, y'all give me you're gonna have to excuse if you hear cat noises. My cat is outside and she does not like locked doors. Yeah, but I'm not letting her in because otherwise she will jump everywhere and throw me off. So if you hear her, I'm not a poor cat parent. It's just that my space. And my partner's outside. So
you're fine. You're fine. It's life.
Yeah, thank you. So going into my degree, I looked at it and I realized that I would pretty much be learning everything. I would learn about computer systems, I would learn about networking, I would learn about coding. I would learn about networking. Pretty much I would learn everything that there is to know about technology. And I was just I want that. Because I felt if I don't end up in security, can't hear the meetup. Who can't hear?
I was asking her, could she hit her meetup or she can't? Oh, the cat. Okay. I was like, you can't hear? We've been talking all this time.
But yeah, so I ended up going into security pretty much because as a security practitioner, you kind of have to know just a little bit of everything in order to kind of understand how you're going to secure things. But for me, it was just oh, in case the security thing fails, at least I'll have all of this knowledge to fall back on to go into something else, which when I first got out of college in 2009, which was right smack dab middle in the recession, it was kind of helpful for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to jump into operations and do more IT stuff, which was also good for me because I got the experience of learning how companies work after getting that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's primarily the reason. It's the money and also just the breadth of stuff that you get to know and explore within security.
Right. So, one of the questions I had on that was when you were into, because I graduated late in life. I graduated in 2007. So, when you started out, like I had started doing Linux before I graduated from college. So during that time, like from 2000 on, Cisco was hot. Cisco was doing their thing. CompTIA was coming around. People weren't really focused on CompTIA.
CompTIA used to be like, because I was fortunate enough to the high school I went to, because again, I knew I wanted to go into computers at a young age. So like I specifically went to my high school because they had a computer program, like that I could go into, like where they were literally opening up machines. And because they were opening up machines, I was like, I want to do that. Like I want to. And so they had us go through the training for like CompTIA A plus and Linux plus, and also the Cisco CCNA. So like I definitely get you there, because that was when CCNA was really just the hotness.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. CCNA, and if you could study up and get your CCNP and your CCIE, you were like
yeah, like you were solid.
you were solid for a long time.
Yeah, but even the CCNA stuff for me, even though I didn't take the cert, the training was great, because when I went into college, like
Mhm.
the person behind our program was one of probably the first people to get his CCIE outside of Cisco employees.
Mhm.
So like, his stuff was he was not just like certified, but he was like very about, no, you're going to be hands on with this.
You're right.
And going to like, and he would teach us in classes, like, because he was networking heavy, but
Mhm.
he would teach us in classes being like, okay, so here's the stuff that the book says, but here's the stuff that the book is not going to tell you that I know from experience.
Right. And
Um,
I credit because I started out doing Cisco networking as well too. I credit understanding networking to my knowledge now to help me understand, like, even in interviews, how when people ask you, well, how does DNS work, or how does ARP work, or how do you troubleshoot? I mean, man, if you had a router, if you had a stack of routers and a stack of switches and you cable them all up and you got your GCE and your DTE, you
mhm.
are you know nothing but troubleshooting.
Yeah, like, and it helps later on too. Like, one of the jobs that I got after I did my 2 year stint at Google, like, it was super helpful, because I was basically doing like knock and like admin support for a hosting company.
Mhm.
And like most of their stuff was like either Cisco or knowing your way around like switch interfaces, which were command line. But that's why it was also helpful for me to know Linux too, because like most of the machines were like, after like the first job where it was kind of Windows and Linux, like most of the environments I interacted with, more likely than not, were either like Windows and Unix based, or just completely Unix based.
Right.
Uh, so like, but like I'm with you. Like during college, basically the one thing that I did not learn through my college learning, which was silly, because like they could have just had like a 100 like beginners Linux course, and for all the extra level courses, which were like, here, we're going to teach you the basics of Linux, like that could have been like done with. But they never, like, I don't know if they changed that, because I know a whole lot of us complained about like you could just have one Linux course, make it a requirement, and then like do like you don't have the teachers like reteaching this over and over again. But like for me, the way I learned Linux is through the Linux groups I was a part of. Like
Mhm.
I started learning Linux when I was in high school, but at the time this was when, yeah, and it's also like for me in high school, I'm gonna age myself too. So like, yeah, high school was like 2005, and this was like when Ubuntu just came out, and was showing people like, oh, you can, do Linux right out of the box, and you don't have to compile everything under the sun in order to make it work. Which you have to do with some distros. Like
you talking about you dating yourself, child? I'm pre YouTube.
Yeah. So like, but yeah, just so like, I didn't get enough of the experience before the end of high school, but like throughout college, because I was involved with those communities on campus as well as off, like I gained so much knowledge.
Right.
So much knowledge.
Because you said DePaul, were you in the Chicago area?
I was in the Chicago area. So like all the Linux groups that were local to the Chicago area, and some of the people behind like some of the open source projects like KDE, GNOME, like,
Right.
yeah, like.
So now you fast forward to what you do today. Like
What
is
I do today?
Yeah, man. What is the hardest part of your day right now when you're talking about operations and security team?
The hardest part of my day right now is knowing what to prioritize and focus on, and also keeping that focus. Right now, what I am currently doing, and what I'm currently doing is basically I am the security tech lead under production engineering at Splice. And so basically my job is to basically ensure that our production environment and its underlying infrastructure is safe for people to use.
Okay.
And so, of course, as any like security person will tell you, that is an ongoing battle. Especially with, startups that are trying to grow and, fit their own security practice to the needs of their business and customers. Right. And also to like what people they have.
Right.
So a lot of what I'm doing is just basically trying to make sure that, our users are safe, and that, we have the visibility in order to make sure things, are secure.
So in that position, what does that look like for you with leading the team?
So right now, the thing for me, and this is kind of common with smaller startup companies, is that usually you are a very, very small team. And so that means you usually have to learn how to collaborate with other teams. So my team is very tiny. So like a lot of what we're doing is trying to collaborate with other teams in order to reach the security objectives.
Do you like the small team, or do you prefer a bigger team?
For now, I kind of like the small team, because what I'm seeing now, and this is going to one of the questions you sent me about, as the industry is shifting, what I'm seeing is that there is more of a shift from there being like, though they still do exist, from having like dedicated security teams doing stuff, especially at the smaller scale, and you having small teams where people are teaching those teams how to do security and guide them and provide guidance and be more in an advisory role. So you're enabling people to have better security practices, instead of and having them slightly gatekeep themselves. But if they want to have questions or want more visibility, be that support. And I think that's good for smaller startups. But once you get over maybe 7, like close to like 500 people and above, like that starts to be like a problem. Like right now, Splice is still relatively small, but like as we grow, like my team's gonna have to grow to keep up with the demand.
And what I've been seeing is the opposite. Is like, okay, yes, you understand security, but I need for you to know how to implement those things.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like there are a whole lot of, there's also this shift too where we're wanting security people who just don't know security in terms of risk assessments and like risk and governance.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want somebody who can do a multitude of things,
Mm-hmm.
which is why like my background is especially helpful to my role right now, because I do understand the operations perspective. I have worked with front end engineers. I have worked with QA people. I have worked with IT, or been in IT. I've worked with support. I've worked with sales and marketing. Like, because I've been in this industry so long, I've worked with at so many places and know how these things work, such that like I can think about, hey, this security change that I am making, what's going to be the potential impact? Like when planning for the next quarter, we're making some changes internally, and the thing I have to think about is, hey, I have to pad some time in there to do some research on how this will affect the teams that use these things. And that is something that a whole lot of security people don't do. Like I've heard some stories. Like security people will just make this change in there because they need to do it in security, but then afterwards people are like, my stuff's broken, what did you do?
Right.
And that's not good, because if you do that and then you try to change it, people will find a way around it.
Right.
Like you want to be able to practice good, impactful security, like impactful in a good way.
Right. Now, when it comes down to like what you're seeing as far as security, are you seeing any blockchain coming down your way for stuff?
For me, not right now. The industry I'm actually kind of in a different industry than pure tech now, because Splice is a music company,
Right.
even though we use tech. So like I haven't seen it as like the most that I can see is maybe it being used as a payment option, but like that's something that like we haven't thought about, or at least as far as I know.
Okay.
I don't like, I think that blockchain and just cryptocurrency in general, while it's growing and becoming a thing, I think it still maybe has like a year or two before it's like gets wide adoption.
Right. So you got a team now, right? And you decide to grow. What are some of those skill sets you're looking for your team members to have coming?
For for me, like the big thing for me is like what I want as a part of my security team
Mm-hmm.
are people like, and this is if I had the option, like
Let's throw it out there. Let's say you want. Let's make this
Rain,
let's make the big picture with the cherry on top or cherries on top.
if I had free reign, it would probably be people who are who know their stuff or have a potential to know their stuff and are excited about security.
Okay.
Like I wouldn't want any senior people because they'd either get bored or they'd have a certain way of doing things.
Okay.
I'd say probably mid-level to junior,
Okay.
and kind of a mix of that. And they would have kind of different disciplines. Specifically, I'd want somebody who can do application engineering, because if they know the application engineering, then I can teach them the security part.
Right.
Or teach somebody who knows QA. It's like, if you know QA, sweet. I've heard this from a security person. It's like, especially when talking to me, and them saying, like, if you knew QA, it would be easier to teach you because like I can teach you to red team like with that because you already have that knowledge of knowing how to test things. But since you're in ops, it's like, but it's like yes and also no. But it's more so for me. I would want to build a team of people who are hoping to grow or change in their careers, but at the same time do not have like the ego. And that's one thing that worries me about hiring a pure like senior security person or a pure security app engineer is that my worry is that like, and this is not to discount all senior people. My cat. I am so sorry, y'all.
You're fine.
Cat, come on.
See, it's okay. Don't worry about the cat. Cat living his or her best life.
Is living her best life. Again, it's just more so kind of giving people that opportunity and that knowledge so they can be as versatile as they need to be. Because who knows where the security industry is going. But there are many ways. I know so much guilt. There are many ways to get into security, and I want to be able through that team to provide those opportunities. And also to eventually, if they find that security is not their thing, they can still go off and do what they need to do and also have that additional knowledge. And so for me, yeah.
You say there's many ways to get in security. I can think of maybe one or two, maybe like system hardening, application. What are some that you think of?
There is so many. So there's governance and risk. So people writing risk assessments or policies or doing, working and facilitating with the audits, making sure that you're aligned with certain standards people have. This is especially important in big companies when you like need to go through SOC 2 audits or PCI audits. Like most of that, like especially the paperwork writing, is in governance and risk at bigger companies. So that's one. Another one is like application security, and that like has many different things. Because you can do product application security, which is developing security features for a product. You can be a pen tester, which is doing the pen testing on different environments for different companies, mostly through contracts. There's a lot of companies that do that. That's also known as red teaming too. If you're going beyond like just the general pen test and code review, some people want you to test physical security as well. But for now, like with application, if you do pen testing, that's one, and that's external to the company, external to a company. If you want to do internal, some bigger companies have red teams, and a lot of them are like developed to, offset costs about, finding somebody external to do consistent, like, vulnerability checking and stuff. And then the latter half are security researchers in that realm. A whole lot of people who do, like, these are bug bounty hunters. These are people who, research out of just curiosity. And that's one, that's another. And sometimes they do it under R&D for companies to try to, their stuff. So that's application. Then you have security operations. And that can have many facets. That's, your server hardening, people who are working on like LDAP security or IAM authentication. That's like another one, especially if you're at a big enough company, like managing AD and LDAP is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And like then you have security incident response. So people who handle the security incidents, people who do forensics on the security incidents and talk about ways to detect these incidents and kind of do analysis on them. These are sometimes within security operations teams. I know the last place that I worked at, we did have an incident response team within security operations. And what else? I'm trying to think of what else. And I think that's pretty much all that I can think of. Like there are some teams that you can dedicate to vulnerability management, but again, you have to be big, and usually it's rolled into security operations or something else.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, so it's a lot, and then I'm not even including because now we're seeing a split, especially with user and user data becoming more of a thing.
Right.
You're seeing more. Hi.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
You're fine.
I was brought in tea and there was a cat. So yeah, like going into user data and protection of all that, there's you also have privacy, which is a whole nother like stuff, because you have like, there are many different ways that privacy engineering is manifesting, and sometimes it is like completely separate from the main security engineering of a product.
Right.
Like I think literally Google has like their main security team or product security teams, and then they have privacy teams. Like same with GitHub too, because they have a community and safety team. And they do a lot of focus on privacy. And then they have their regular security team.
Did that change under Microsoft?
Huh?
Did that change under Microsoft? What?
I don't know. Like
Right.
like my friend who is over the community and safety team at GitHub, like Danielle, like she's still there. She's still there leading and managing. So like yeah. Yeah, and it's also like when you have big companies, big corporations that kind of buy up companies, and Microsoft has done this with LinkedIn too. Sometimes they just leave them be. And they don't have too much, like put too much like new folk or people in it.
It's already running, leave it alone.
Yeah, it's like it's already running, like as long as it keeps making us money.
Right. But you need to move your infrastructure over to here.
Yeah. So, or it's like, I don't know, like mergers and acquisitions, I have not had too much experience in.
Okay. Yeah, I've been through 2 of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can be fun and not fun. It usually take about 3 years.
Yeah, and they take a while. And then but yeah, those are like all the ones that I know of. Like security and privacy together are just a very, very vast, very vast place.
So
I think a whole lot of people underestimate all the things that they can potentially do. Like most people think it's like, I can just do pen testing and it'll be like, or the only option available for me is to pop a box. And it's like, no, actually, like there's a whole lot of more companies wanting people to, be able to defend against that or figure out ways to, mitigate the stuff that red team folks find, even though that work is, less visibly less visibly cool.
Right. And that I think that's more the hard part is, how to make dev, sec, sec, x, blah 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 cool for people to go into those jobs, because what I've found is, as we continue, um, everybody always talking about the pipeline issue.
Yeah.
And as we continue, uh, I see a lot for coding, and I see a lot for security. And we're
There,
just now getting people to understand that, okay, that's nice, right?
mhm.
But there's this other piece here, and it's called infrastructure. And, we're missing, like that glue that, like, okay, you deployed your app and you made sure that it was secure, but you're missing this piece of where it gets deployed to.
Yeah. And I think a whole lot of people tend to, I think a whole lot of people tend to underestimate that. And I think they tend to
I agree.
underestimate ops people in general, especially because ops people, as far as I have known, ops people are also usually the security people, like until they actually get security people, because ops folk have to handle LDAP and they have to handle host firewalls and they have to, like, these are the people who know security the most at some of these companies,
Right.
especially at some of the smaller ones. And a whole lot of the time, like, a whole lot of people are asked, so especially in terms of, after you ran the app, okay, you're running the app on the box. Is the box patched? Does
Right.
it have 0 days in the kernel?
Yeah.
Does it does it have something where something can escape from the container? Like, is there a library like I think it was an NPM library
Yeah.
that stole coin wallets? Like, like, and this is things that you kind of have to like look for and also like kind of monitor, and you need you need ops people in order to like at least kind of start that and build that, especially in terms of infrastructure and access, like
Mhm.
that alone.
Right.
That alone and the patching, like
You talking big? You talking? Let's put your pants on. Let's get a book. Let's get some tea, because we're gonna be here for a minute.
yeah. And it's also just like I could tell you so much. Like one of the things that I brought up as well, and like I remember talking about this when I went to Black Hat a few years back, about how a whole lot of people don't realize that some operational and even application stuff is security.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if your site goes down, that's a loss of availability. That
Mm-hmm.
is a security, like, that is one of the major tenets. It's like you have to keep your service available.
Mm-hmm.
Like, otherwise, like, that is considered failure, and that like that is a security thing. Like, that is like there's availability, confidentiality, and integrity. Like,
Mm-hmm.
top three things. But
See,
if your site goes down, availability is gone. Like, that is one part of your triangle just
yeah.
gone.
Yep.
So like a whole lot of people I think underestimate how important that is, especially when planning out operations, because I have seen some things.
I mean, but even to that point too is, I think, and this is not me doing it, but just as in general as a whole, I think we do a poor job of explaining that to people, like to say, okay, look, you made this application, but do you know that your application got deployed to here? Here are the steps that were taken to make that happen, and here's the security behind that. I think, and I don't know of any of the coding academies, most definitely not the colleges, um,
Yeah.
that even glaze over that. I was at Bonefish last night,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking to one of the guys, one of the bartenders, and I had my tablet out, and he's like, "Oh," he's like, "What do you do?" Because I had, of course, on the back of mine, I got, you know, stuff,
Yeah, all the stickers.
all the stickers, right? And he's like, some of those look kind of familiar. I've seen Red Hat. That's Linux. He's like, so what do you do? And I told him what I did, and he's like, he was in school, and so I said, what are you going to school for? He's like, computer science. I said, oh, okay. I said, cool. I said, well, what's your plan after that? He's like, to get a job. I was like, okay, like to do what? Like, what are you getting a job to do? I said, do you know anything about automation, infrastructure as code, application development, any of that?
A whole lot of people, like, that is one thing I'm grateful for with my education, is that I learned at least some of this, like
Mm,
some of at least the concepts that especially now as stuff is getting more softwareized, like I still know the basic concepts on how this stuff works.
right.
So like when I did get out, like I at least had the knowledge of a junior engineer at that point, like
Hmm.
a junior administrator. Um, and that was just, it was just useful to like have.
Right.
Like I know so many people who are going into computer science and they're like, I'm going to be a coder. And it's like, a coder in what though? Front end, back end, like what coding language are you thinking about going into? Like, though that doesn't matter in the long run. If you can code, like you can easily pick up anything for me. But like it's like a whole lot of people aren't asked that question or given that industry knowledge of being like, okay, this is what you're supposed to go to. And even for me going out of college, that was still something like, okay, what am I going to do with my career? Because like I can't be a pen tester because I don't have enough knowledge and security, like or enough like experience in pen testing in order to do what I need to do, which I found out later is like I could have learned all that, or like I already had the knowledge. Like I remember like at one point being like, man, like I don't know how to do a risk assessment proper. Like, let me go to this webinar. So I go to this webinar and turns out it's like, oh no, I already did this before. Like I already did this
I
before.
just
I know
didn't know that was the name of it.
like I already know this documentation. Like I've already done this. Like I've already been through this, and it's so like I think it's also just having kind of the confidence to do stuff too, and like college really doesn't teach that well. Like college gives you theory, which is great because it provides some foundational stuff. But sometimes like you need the practice, and just I got more practice outside of school than I did in, with the exception of like my final project.
Hmm.
So
And then for you, knowing these things, and we got kids coming out of college. And I don't know, I don't want to discourage people from going to college and doing their thing. That's never been my goal. I just want people to be aware. What would you recommend as far as classes to either A, supplement those college courses, or B, I'm not going to college, I'm just gonna go take some classes. What would you recommend?
what would I recommend for classes?
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing that I don't like to recommend, because it's like if you spend all that money on college, um, like why would you do this? But like one thing that I've seen that has been kind of a problematic point for me is that a whole lot of people with 4-year degrees after that will go into coding boot camps, like just because they need that experience on top of their degree because they don't have that 1 year of like practical coding experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I heard that, I was kind of floored. But I'm like, it does prove a point though, because like most of the time in like universities or colleges, unless they're like the cutting edge or one of the big, Carnegie Mellons, or like the schools that are technical but you don't know of because you're a person of color who's in a small town and would not know anything. You just know about ITT Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to go against ITT Tech. Like, if that's your option,
I
like,
think they closed, didn't they?
yeah, maybe.
I think they did.
Yeah. But it's like, for like, what point was I making with this? Oh Lord. Um, like, but for some people that is like an option. For me, I feel like the best learning that I got, and this is especially true um, with I think this was especially true with me being in school, um, is basically like online and with the communities. Like, there's so much information out there now, um, even in online communities. Like, I did have the tech community in Chicago, which is rich and developed, and it's amazing.
Okay.
But like for some people, and I brought this up in an article once, for some people, like they don't have that access. Some people are out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Go to some type of meetup like would require them to drive hours, which is why I'm glad that there's more of a push for remote interactions. Yeah, exactly, like this.
I.e. women in links.
Yeah, so like more remote communities that can kind of go through stuff. And there's also just so many resources. Like for security, if you are a student or still learning, there are so many resources given to students right now for like
Mm-hmm.
free. If you just you got to watch the terms so you're not running up a bill on AWS, but Azure, um, Azure, I think DigitalOcean, like all of the cloud providers right now, GCP too, like provide free or cheap resources for students to use, or people who are trying to learn.
Mm.
Um, so like there's that. There's people trying to make more open guides for operations engineers. Like I believe there's one called, let me see. Nope. There's one called, I believe it's called Ops School.
Yeah, op school. I got it.
Mhm.
I got it on my thing.
Yeah. So like, learning Unix fundamentals. It has like pretty much all the stuff that you'd want to know to be an operations engineer, having that experience, like practicing setting up clusters and breaking them down and knowing the different operations. That at least, you can say, hey, I have like just by you saying, hey, I have familiarity.
Familiarity.
Yeah, familiarity. Sorry, brain.
Yep.
By just saying you have familiarity with that, it gives you an edge. Like for me, the reason, so like when I was in school, I was I was I was blessed with the opportunity to intern at Google. Um, and this was um, and this was cool because like later on, like I realized that I was very, very fortunate enough because I worked at Google twice. But the cool thing about it was like, I interned at Google before like the Chinese attack happened on
Okay.
Gmail. And then I worked for them full time for 2 years after that.
Okay.
Um, but going back to the intern part of it, because I'll go back to that later. Um, um, okay, cool. Sorry, Terraform course, sweet. Um, Thank you for posting that, like, because that is like there is so much stuff that I still need to learn. Like Terraform, I have down now.
Okay.
But yeah, sorry, caught off guard. So like,
We can't
uh,
hear you, D.
Oh, It's me, D. So it's like, you know, my side chat is like my conversation of like the church announcements. So it's really not meant to you know, throw you off. It's more just like, okay, let me have our advertisements in between that on chat. So definitely didn't mean to throw you off.
No worries.
Super Bowl commercial.
But we do still have room for the Terraform course tomorrow.
Yeah. So people, get your Terraform course tickets if you still need that training. So going back to the Google internship, the reason why they hired me, I think one of the reasons why is because I had so much experience with using Linux. Because I had like knowledge. Yeah, exactly. Because I had so much knowledge and I did so much, like hung out with the Linux crew, like after my classes and like became leadership. Yeah, exactly. Like that was the reason that they looked at me. I was like, yeah, I know Linux. I know all these distros. Like, come at me.
Let's go.
And it did. But it's like having that knowledge now, I feel like helped me get my foot in the door. Having that knowledge and experience, even if it wasn't complex, even if it wasn't like scaled up to 1,000 machines, like
right.
Having that knowledge and practice, even in the basic sense, I think will help you get your foot in the door. And there are so many online resources. So if you're like a student, the best thing I can tell you is you have the resources, you also have the time, unless you're like working 24/7, at which point it's like, you know, pace yourself. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But if you do have that time, like there are so many things available to you now that especially wasn't available to me back then. Like back when, yeah, exactly.
Back with you.
Yeah. In 2000. 2000.
Way back in 2005.
Try 93.
We're not laughing at you. We're really not. But we are so much older than you.
Not 93. Not 93.
The struggle of dial-up. Like I actually met, so there was apparently an engineer at my last job. The reason I eventually went to that last job is that I found out that this engineer had worked at Black Planet. I was like, you handled a social network back in 2001. I remember it like breaking down all the time, but now like as an operations engineer, I understood how bad of a feat that was. The only database you had at the time was like Oracle.
Yeah.
Like Oracle DB. Like, come on.
People are like, why are you so hands-on? I didn't have a choice. Like it was like, you need to get this rack out this server. Out of this box, store it in this rack. You need to cable it up. You need to read the manual. You need to set up your RAID. You need to get this Cisco router spun up and do it. But what's so funny about all of that is still Linux was that foundation. But when I go talk to people in interviews and I'm talking to people who got big teams, the first thing they say is, we need somebody to come in and teach foundational knowledge. Like they're like, our people don't know how to what is a subnet. They don't know what networking is. They don't know what DNS is. They don't know these basic things.
Yeah.
And now people are like, we need somebody that know everything. So that full stack and that front end and that back end kind of collides, and now you got this full stack sysadmin ops security person.
Yeah, and there's only so much that people can do. Like even from like to a point, like I have to. There's only so much I can do in the day. The only thing is like I can be visible and be a support to people. Right. And be like, what are you doing right now? There's a security thing. Okay, you got this? Sweet. I'm going to keep going. If you need help, let me know. Like, I'm here. but like there's just, I think having full stack engineers has its place, but eventually as you grow, you start to hit a wall. And things just need to become like more specialized, or you need to like have that person like, you know, do more general support stuff or more architecture stuff just that's higher up.
Right.
So.
And Lavonda says we're still surviving from lean process improvement initiatives, so we're not superhuman. We're not, but they want us to be. But you know that comes with a cost.
It does come with a cost. It comes with money.
Exactly.
Like I tweeted this either today or yesterday about how the head of Marvel, Kevin, his last name starts with an F. I think it's Feige. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just like, you know, interviewing Brie Larson and Ryan Coogler and being like, realizing during the interview, he's like, oh snap, we're not interviewing them, they're interviewing us. And I was just like, yep, that's how it's gonna be now, because you done trained us up. Like we know everything now because you done leaned on us, and now it's like I was just like, I wish every like company like led, you know, by white dudes would understand that. It's true though. Like it's becoming that underrepresented minorities, especially that I'm seeing now with the advent of social media, we're becoming more numerous in this industry. And that's like, and we're also like handling stuff. Like we're doing stuff that like would take 3 people to do. Like I've heard so many stories of colleagues like leaving jobs and then they have to hire a team of people. Because they decided not to give this person more stuff to progress.
And you know, and part of that, and I'm guilty of it as well, but I'm guilty of it as well. Like but for me, I just like to know. I want to know why it works that way, how to get it to work that way. So I may cross like 4 or 5 different domains. You know, like the ops person, the security person, this, that, and the other. Okay, that's how that works. So I'm gonna create this little pipeline to make that thing work. Okay, it's done. So what's next? What we got to do next?
That's like the helpful thing. And I've just seen so many people at companies be like, kind of stopping and be like, why are you asking for this? Just do the thing. And it's like, in order for me to do the thing, I need to understand how it works, like contextually. Like, you can't tell me to build a thing when I don't know how the pipeline works at this company or like how the process should be done at this company. Like, come on.
Well, you could create one, then we'll let you know if it works or not. That's usually how it goes. But to answer that though, most of the time it's probably not a pipeline already made.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if somebody tells me there's not a pipeline already made, cool. Like, then I'm just gonna go ahead and make one. There's like already pipelines like in the system that other teams are using and you're not using them or like kind of with the program, like it's the fragmentation, especially happens in bigger companies. Well, no, actually big and small companies that kind of just like, you know,
throw something on the wall and hope it sticks.
Yeah. So
yeah.
But that's what I like, going back to like what, you know, skill sets is like pretty much either getting stuff that you're not getting in school on your own, getting that experience on your own, especially because the internet is a pretty limitless resource at the moment. But there's also, I think, for me, I think it's also specializing in one thing that you're good at, whether it's application, whether it's writing documentation, whether it's, you know, you have a good sense of how UI works or you have an eye for it. Like whether you know how to test environments and are good at that, or like, you know, or you go into QA and you're, you know how to code. Like having something that you're one thing that you're particularly good at I think is helpful, like outside of security. That's going to be super helpful in the long run when you eventually want to do
other things,
security stuff, because you have being like, hey, I already know this knowledge base. How can I add security to it?
right?
And then, yeah, so you can, like, if you're an application engineer, you can be like, hey, so how do I get more into the application engineering stuff? Because a lot of times for security people, if you ask them how they got into security, 9 times out of 10, it's because they fell into it. I'm not kidding. Like a whole lot of women leaders, the reason that they got into security is that at some point, like either the information security team was short-staffed, or they were doing the security work already, and somebody was like, hey, do you want to join the security team? Or like, there's just so many stories of people just falling into it.
Right.
Like, and even for me, like, even though I have a degree into security, even for myself, I just kept on falling into it because like at every company I went to, there was a security issue that I was just like, I'm going to take care of this. And I see a security thing here, so I'm just going to handle it.
Right. Initiative to do it on your own.
Yeah. And eventually you get to be known as like the security person. Like, so it's also just like, but I think the reason that it helped is that I had like a technical base to then be like, okay, I can use the technical base that I have in operations in order to expand into going into security. So I think that is something that people should keep on the watch for too, is like, you know, have that one thing you're good at outside of security. It's also just good to not just be so security focused, because if you are too security focused, you tend to forget about the impacts that, you know, like you forget general technology practice.
Okay.
Like, because again, like we were talking about in the beginning, if you push out a security change without thinking, hey, how is this going to impact our users? How is this going to impact our employees? Like what is this change going to do? Which is like a general technology thing, but not a security thing, because I feel like security practitioners, if they're pure security, they think about the standards and sticking to the standards and not about the impacts a lot. Or about the lack of impact. So if it's like for instance, in the case of Equifax, they had the security stuff, they had it in line, and they still got popped. And that's because they didn't think about, hey, what are the impacts of us not doing this? Like you have to think of some of those things instead of just checking out boxes. You have to be a generalist about like, you know, finding like about being practical about how you're handling your systems and how you're handling your application stuff. So like, yeah, that would be my thing, is like have that one thing that you also do along with security, because like you can bounce back from one to the other. And it's also just good to have on top of that security knowledge so that you just don't get lost in the security sauce.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, man, I say all the time, I'm a journalist myself, and when I need to go deep, I'll go deep if I have to. If I don't, then I go on to something else. But I guess you could say my focus would be Linux, and then like everything that, you know, rises up out of that, you know, from there.
Yeah, there's so much out of that, like, because Linux servers pretty much run the world now. They just do. Exactly. Yeah. Like that's one reason I was glad I was this. Like, yes, I'm glad I learned Linux, because it's just like That
Foundational skills. It teaches you everything. I think Linux teaches you every single thing we talked about tonight. It teaches you about security, teaches you about networking. It teaches you. It teaches you basically your basic fundamentals of everything you need to know. And then if you decide
yeah.
you want to go into one little area, you can.
It teaches about networking. It even teaches about systems better than like
Mm-hmm.
because my computer systems class, it was like, hey, so you're going to read assembly code and use it, use the GNU debugger.
Mm-hmm.
Get done and read how to make this thing work and how to make some code to do a buffer overflow.
Right.
It was super funny too because I think this was when virtualized systems were just coming out, and I managed, I think, to kill one of our servers on campus. Since I worked on campus, it was hilarious because one of the guys reached out to me and was like, hey, could you stop doing that? You're in the server right now. Can you just, whatever you're doing, this process, just you're literally killing the complete and entire server for everyone. And I was like, oh, my bad. But it's learning about systems in that way, the way that they can fail is just.
Now, you mentioned that at work you try to be seen and available for people. How else do you lend a helping hand to others in the business? And does your company help with that at all? Any?
So how do I help people in the business? I do things like this with talking with the community. I give witty commentary on Twitter and try to give some security facts. Right now, because my company is in the music company field, we do more to help music communities and producers.
Mm-hmm.
But I know just internally for my company, we have a lot of people who speak at conferences. And our VP of engineering, who is lovely, he's the best, allows us to go and speak at conferences.
Okay.
And I think that's allows us and supports us in that. And I think that's huge.
What does that support look like as a sidebar?
Yeah, especially
for people who want to speak.
Mm-hmm. Especially because you get so many people who are it's a career advancement for them, and it's also a plug in case you're hiring for your company. So it's pretty dope.
Right. So do they financially help you guys go to the conferences, with travel grants or anything, or is just being flexible with the time off?
I think with the time off.
Okay.
That's still important too.
Yeah, we're still growing company, so it's starting to come together.
But that's still important too because some people are yeah, so I don't know what you're gonna do, but yeah, we need you here.
Exactly. I've gotten it so much from other places of being like, hey, so are you I know you're going to this conference, but we're going to need you to stop doing that. And I was just like, oh, okay, sweet. I completely understand because it's 2 conferences in 1 month, but you could have maybe let me know beforehand.
Right, before I accepted it.
Before I accepted it or before I said I was going,
Right.
So,
and that's hard.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of those dilemmas that I think every person who goes to a conference faces. Hence why, shameless plug here, we have Women in Linux conference coming up in August. And it's virtual, so you don't have to worry about that flying somewhere. You can just share the screen. You can do everything. So we want to make sure that everybody who wants to talk, sign up to talk. If you want to attend, you can purchase a ticket now. But this year's theme is really about automation, security, infrastructure as code, DevOps, the whole thing. Maybe even throw some Kubernetes in there. But I think everybody is beat Kubernetes to death, but nobody never talks about service mesh and
Yeah,
what does that look like.
or just general security with Kubernetes.
Right.
So much. Like I feel like so many people don't talk about it enough.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that, not just like with general security practice, but the things that could potentially go wrong with your Kubernetes cluster if you don't particularly have it set up right.
Right. Right. And role, RBAC, even the containers and the security of the containers,
Mm-hmm.
and and that deployment, your deployment pipeline for that. What's that look like? Even namespaces, like how do you divide that up, or even quotas. How much load is on that? Is this deployment gonna kill this server, or what's gonna happen here?
Or do
Those
you
things.
do it in proper ways? Do you have like etcd lockdown so that not just everybody can access it? Do you
Mm-hmm.
have security certificates if your company is about that encryption and transit and rest?
Right.
I
We didn't even get into Vault, and how that works, and going down that path, and even sidecar proxy, setting up CA certs. Those beautiful, wonderful things are things that people tackle every single day. I don't say they're successful. I think they just tackle them and try to figure it out. But this is the time that we're in. But to piggyback off of everything that we've been saying, that foundational of understanding networking and security and DNS and routing and all those things play into what this field we're talking about, and that's Kubernetes and how that looks. Now we're talking about we got one small one what it can hold 5,000 containers on the deployment. So now, imagine that.
Mm-hmm. And then just like all the services. I feel like one thing is like having knowledge of the back end for thinking of the cloud. It
Mm-hmm.
was super useful for me to work at a cloud company, even though it wasn't one of the top ones, because I understood kind of some of the limitations of the cloud. Well, now it's kind of old, but like 7 years ago, the cloud was not as stable or resilient as it was. I remember when it got that bug one time that had all the providers being like, so we have to reboot everything. Shout out to people who had to encounter the Rackspace outage of what was it, 2014, 2015?
It was one before that. It was I just had one. It was a Rackspace outage, but it was due to a truck rolling into the data center, and so it wiped out the main power, and then the backup power. When I think when everybody arrived on the scene, they shut down the backup power, so the backup power didn't come up either. So they
Yeah.
down. And I worked at Rackspace at the time when that happened. So that was like 2005, 7, something like that. Somewhere in 2000. Well, no,
Yeah.
that was 2008.
Yeah. I remember like back a few years ago, and this was when a 0-day came out for one of the virtual machine hypervisors or what have you underneath, and there was a 0-day, and then on a Friday night they were like, so they sent this out Friday night 9 p.m. not during the day. They're like, so we're gonna have to reboot all of our data centers. Here's the schedule. And luckily my coworker caught it and alerted everybody. But I was on call that weekend for one of my coworkers. So that was just basically a weekend where I was just sitting and because our backend at the time had a bug, we had to manually shut all our backends down. Wait for the machine to get rebooted, and once it was clear, bring them back up.
Mm-hmm. That sounds fun.
I know, but it's just like, I think being on the other side and knowing how those maintenances go at smaller companies made me be like, okay, so of course, when you're in the cloud, that means you need to prepare for resiliency.
Chaos.
Have, a backup in case your site goes down in one location and you can bring it up in another.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're gonna open it up to some questions. I see Fred is on, I'm on, D's on, Lavanda's on. I just want to see if anyone has any questions for Jamesha, anything that you want to ask, anything that we didn't cover that you thought we should have covered.
yeah.
Go right ahead and post them, or you can turn on your microphone and go from there. Lavonda, I see your microphone is on, so you go ahead. And keep. No. Okay. It's not.
You are awesome, Jamesha. Thank you so much. You were like super thorough.
Yeah.
And thank you for
coming up.
No, we can't hear you. Let me send.
You can't help me. You can't hear me.
No, I hear you. Lavonda said she was saying something and we couldn't hear her. And I don't. She's not muted.
Her outbound audio.
Yeah.
Setting.
Let me mute and then unmute. All right, try now. I heard some clicking.
Lavonda, you can also type your question as well.
Yeah.
If mics do not work.
Yes, because the microphones and speakers can be a little tricky. Sometimes it'll default to your headset, and if you don't have it in there, it'll still be on headset, not your internal speakers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
We also thank you for coming. What's next for you? And how do you plan to grow?
So, right now, my plan is to try to do more, to try to go more into the security space and also more into the leadership space. That is my trajectory right now. And that is exciting for me because my company is doing exciting things, and it is also scary for me because I understand how, especially as a security practitioner, how security incidents can cause a lack of trust.
Right.
And so, and also the amount of work that, is ahead of me. So I'm excited for it. And I'm also a little anxious for anxious. But overall, I'm excited. I'm in a really good spot. I'm supported by a really great team. And I'm just hoping for the best with that next and digging more into the security side, especially into the security application side.
So would that be CISO? Is what you're looking at?
Don't hit me up with that. That's like 5-10 years off.
That's 5-10 years off.
Yeah, it's like 5-10 years off. Security.
It's 5-10 years off because you just put it out there.
But yeah, for now it's mostly trying to, I think application security is probably the one that I probably would need to build on or get more experience in, which I'm hoping to kind of build and grow along with the leadership part. If people want to follow me on Twitter, it is jamfish728. So jam is in a jar and fish without the C, and 728. But otherwise, if you are an audio inclined person, head over to splice.com and check us out.
We will do. We'll make
All
sure
right.
to look that
Maybe
up.
something.
All right. Bye, everybody.
See ya.